Education. What a gift. The most valuable gift that we can give ourselves and to our offsprings, our children. There is no greater gift than able to educate. Educate ourselves, our colleagues, our friends, our students, most of all our children. We are all born with an open mind. Open mind means a pure mind. Now, what we don't know is that according to the book of Kabbalah mysticism, it is taught us that every child in the womb has an angel teaching them the whole Torah. The whole Bible is being taught. And it even gives a description like there's a candle lit on their head. That's why sometimes mothers get heartburns. That an angel is teaching the child the whole Torah. At birth, the angel comes and gives a flick on the lip. That's why there's an indentation on the lip. And the child forgets everything. Now, it's time for the child to relearn everything. What was referred to in Kabbalah helps us appreciate and understand the importance of education, the importance of taking our children who emerge and come into this world so pure, and to be able to educate them with the most positive and meaningful education possible that will give them tools how to sojourn through their life. Education is not just what we study in the books. Education is what the child experiences at home. Education is what the children witness with their own eyes of what happens in their home. Not only what they learn in school, but how it's practiced at home. That is the best education that children can get. That the school actually is complementing what they are already learning at home. The fundamentals of education is not only to learn the academics, but also to live by it. Also to practice it, to feel it, that it is part of your life. That what you learn is what you practice. What you're practicing is what you learn about. And that is why education is such a fundamental part of life. In the Jewish world, it is the foundation, it is the root of success that begins at birth. We begin educating the children from when they emerge from the womb. The very first words that the child hears are prayers of thanks to God for this beautiful child. When the child is brought home, the child will see beautiful prayers that are the first thing their eyes see. As the child grows up, the child will be hearing lullabies before they go to sleep. And when they wake up, it's all about living the experience that we are educated with. And that is why education is such a critical and important part of society. And it is so critical that it's so fundamental to have a successful life is to have a healthy education, a meaningful education, and a true education. A true education means that when teachers who are teaching it live by those rules as well. They're not teaching it as a subject, but they're teaching it as a way of life. And this is why it's so important that we make every effort possible to enroll our children into a Jewish day school, a Hebrew school. that they can get a Jewish education. The first 9 years of a child's education is so critical and so important. Those are their formative academic years. If we set them straight during those 9 years, and then continues on to middle school and then to high school and through college, they are set on a good foundation. But the education needs to be a wholesome, pure, true education. That both in the secular studies and the Judaic studies. This is why our sages has put so much emphasis on educating our children. The words are Chanoch lena'ar al pi darko. Educate the children in their ways. In other words, adapt to the children's level, how they would learn, how they want to learn, what attracts them to learning, what makes it special for them, and why education is such an integral part of the perpetuation of Judaism. And that is how it gets handed over from generation to generation. This is also our legacy, that when we look back, we don't just think about us in the now, but we think about the 3,000 years of sacrifices that our ancestors went through, trials and tribulations of the harshest times, but they did not give up their Judaism. They saw to it that Judaism should continue from generation to generation. And that's why we are here today, because of their sacrifices. And they are counting on us to be the link in the chain. Just visualize this very powerful chain. And you are a link in that chain. And you have that choice to make. Am I going to perpetuate and keep the chain going? And I'm going to be a strong link between the past and the future. That could only happen through education. That could only happen when we ourselves are educated. And if we weren't given the opportunity to have a Jewish education, then see to it that your children can have a Jewish education, so that you are doing your part to connect the past, the present to the future. That is the power of education. That is the gift of education, that we don't take it for granted. We know it requires effort, it requires commitment, and it requires a dedication and a devotion that is going to be the most rewarded investment you have ever done. Giving your children a solid education, you will witness and grow up to see children growing up so beautifully. Children are compared to a orchard where you're going to plant. You want to plant a tree that's a strong tree that will eventually bear its own fruit, that will be strong enough to weather through all storms. But to be able to plant it, you need to take a seed. The seed needs to be planted deep into earth. And it needs to be looked after. It needs to be watered. It needs to be cared for. And then when the sapling starts to grow, we need to be able to trim it. And you need to prune it. And you need to do whatever it takes to protect it, so that it could grow up to be a very strong tree. Weeds? Anyone could grow weeds. That doesn't take any skill to grow weeds. But to grow a productive tree and a plant that will perpetuate, that takes a lot of commitment, a lot of dedication. And just like we take a seed, we plant it in the earth, miraculously, the seed starts to sprout out. Where does that miracle come from? That miracle comes from the gift from the earth, is from God. God waits for us to make an effort, to dig the hole in the ground, to bury the seed, to water it, to plant it, to grow it. And then God gives you the gift that this seed will germinate and turn into something. The same thing with education. When you make it a priority that you plant the seeds, that you give your children, enroll them in a Jewish day school, that the teachers who respect their religion and observe their religion and talk from the heart and teach Judaism as a real living life, then your children will accept it. They will love it. And they will bring it home and share it with you. And together, you are going to grow this most beautiful, beautiful tree that's going to bear tremendous amount of fruit. I just want to share with you a personal story. That the reason why I am sitting here today talking to you came about because of two individuals made a decision in the most difficult times. 1930, my grandparents lived in Providence, Rhode Island. It was in the most difficult times of the Depression, struggling financially in a terrible way. My grandfather ran a printing shop, barely able to make enough to support the family. They had 7 children. Young children. These children were not getting any Jewish education. There was nothing available in Providence, Rhode Island. And my grandparents had to make a decision. Do we stay in Providence, Rhode Island and keep our lifeline of finances alive through keeping our printing presses rolling? But our children are going to lose out. They're not going to have any Jewish education whatsoever. They're going to grow up in absence of any Jewish education. We may be able to sustain ourselves financially, but spiritually we go bankrupt. Or do we close our printing press down? Which basically in those days of the Depression would mean bankruptcy. But we pack our bags and we move to a community, to a city that has a Jewish education. Having to make a decision like that was a very difficult decision. Mind you, during the height of the Depression, 1930, my grandparents made the decision to close the printing shop down. And they packed up, they took their 7 children, moved to Brooklyn, New York, to Borough Park neighborhood, enrolled our children in a Jewish day school. My father was just a little child at the time, 3 years old. He grew up learning Judaism in a Jewish day school. Grew up learning to love Judaism. Him and his siblings all grew up with a solid Jewish education. They all grew up to marry Jewish spouses who are all observant, children who are observant, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. I am sitting here today talking to you as a direct result of one decision that my grandparents made that affected hundreds, if not thousands, of descendants over so many years. This is the gift of education. Not to take it lightly, not to entrust it into just any school that's out there. Do your research. Just like before we buy a piece of jewelry or a car or a house, we do extensive research to make sure we're making the right move. This is our children. This is our precious future. Make it a priority and a commitment that you will give your children a Jewish education. And I promise you, it will be a best investment ever. Not only for now, but literally for generations down. We'll be grateful to you. And we'll always have gratitude for making that change. You don't want your child to be absent of knowing about godliness, about Judaism. I'll never forget the anecdote about a teacher who asked the kids in class, "Where is God?" One child raised a hand, said, "In Israel." The other one said, "In Jerusalem." The other one said, "In the synagogue." The other one said, "In the ark." And one kid raised a hand and said, "God is in the toilet." So the teacher said, "Excuse me?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "Why would God be in the toilet?" The child says, "Whenever my dad goes to the restroom, my mom bangs on the door and says, 'God, can't you get out of there already?'" We want our children to know God a little more knowledgeable than that. You do your part, because our children was gifted to us by God on loan. He has entrusted us with the children that we're going to do right to Him. And doing right to God and His children is by giving them a solid Jewish education, which will be together with a great secular education. They'll complement each other in such a beautiful way that our children will grow up wholesome, well-rounded, well-knowledgeable, most of all, very secure in their faith and in their knowledge, to be most successful and productive citizens throughout their life. You do your best, and God will do the rest. God bless you. God loves you.